Something serious is happening across America. From packed discount stores to rising credit card debt, the signs are everywhere. People aren't just cutting back, they're surviving. The Trump economy is shifting fast, and it's not just about prices at the pump or the grocery aisle anymore. Trade tensions, new tariffs, and political uncertainty have pushed U.S. consumers into full-on survival mode.
It is likely that many things we buy will be getting more expensive. President Trump's new tariffs take effect this week.
American households continue to lose confidence in their financial futures, according to a survey released on Tuesday.
These are bad numbers. It was expected that we would see it drop to 94, but seeing it drop to 92.9, that is the lowest since the middle of the pandemic.
But what exactly triggered this sudden shift? And how bad could it get from here? Why are everyday Americans feeling the squeeze harder than ever before? And most importantly, can anyone actually afford to keep up with the American dream anymore? President Trump's new wave of tariffs has officially hit the U.S. economy like a freight train, jacking up costs for importers, manufacturers, and anyone remotely connected to a supply chain. There's now a 10% across-the-board tariff on nearly all imported goods, plus extra fees slapped onto cars, steel, and aluminum. Trump has insisted these measures will shrink the trade deficit, bring manufacturing jobs roaring back, and somehow even stop both fentanyl and migrants at the border. But Americans are not finding these tariffs as patriotic as promised. Despite the added costs, U.S. consumer spending for Easter is still expected to rise about 5% this year. Americans are apparently still ready to throw down on Peeps, plastic eggs, and pastel everything, even if the economy feels like it's riding a roller coaster blindfolded. A new report from the National Retail Federation said shoppers are gearing up to drop around $23.6 billion this season, up from last year's $22.4 billion. Discount stores are once again shaping up to be the top stop for Easter hauls, proving that a deal is still holy, Grail-level sacred. Egg prices, though, not very festive, thanks to a brutal round of avian flu that wiped out millions of hens earlier this year. Eggs have nearly doubled in price. It got so bad that Walmart completely skipped them in its annual Easter meal kit promo. Apparently, even the world's biggest retailer has its limits. At the same time, Trump's sweeping tariffs have sparked recession fears, and the cloud is hanging over consumer confidence. But some big-name retailers, Target, dollar stores, and others who crushed it during the Christmas season, say shoppers still seem eager to celebrate Easter, even if they're pinching pennies. Catherine Cullen, NRF's Vice President of Industry and Consumer Insights, said holidays like Easter become more important during uncertain times. She noted that even when people feel the financial pinch, they'll still go out of their way to keep traditions alive. That might mean hunting down the best deals, skipping luxuries, or finding cheaper ways to celebrate, but the bunny is still coming. So while prices are up, tariffs are hitting hard, and economic vibes are iffy at best, Easter is still happening, just with more off-brand candy and fewer deviled eggs. The National Retail Federation says most shoppers this Easter are letting tradition lead the way when it comes to spending. But not everyone's out here getting sentimental. About 36% of consumers are just chasing the sales and snagging whatever's discounted. Top of the list, food, gifts, and candy. According to the report, Americans are expected to fork over $7.4 billion on food, $3.8 billion on gifts, and another $3.3 billion on candy. That's a lot of chocolate bunnies and spiral hams. But while Easter baskets are getting stuffed, consumer confidence is crumbling over in Michigan. The University of Michigan's latest survey just delivered a serious buzzkill. Consumer sentiment for the U.S. economy fell to 50.8 in April, its lowest level since June 2022. That's down from 57 in March and well under the predicted 54.5. This makes it the fourth month in a row consumer optimism has taken a hit, dropping over 30% since December 2024. The culprit? The ongoing trade war drama that's had more twists than a soap opera. Consumers are flashing warning lights left and right. Expectations around business conditions, personal finances, income, inflation, and jobs all took another nosedive this month. The index that tracks how people feel about the current economy fell to 56.5 from 53.8. while the expectations index dropped to 47.2, its lowest since 1980. For context, that's Jimmy Carter era bad. And as for inflation, people are bracing themselves. Year-ahead inflation expectations surged to 6.7%, the highest they've been since 1981. Meanwhile, 5-year inflation expectations crept up too, from 4.1% to 4.4%. According to the latest Ipsos consumer tracker, only 37% of Americans say they feel even somewhat comfortable with their current financial situation. That's a 14-point plunge since November. And let's just say that's not exactly the kind of drop anyone's celebrating. Right now, 1 in 4 people believe the economy is the biggest headache the country's dealing with. But how people see the world kind of depends on where they sit on the political spectrum. Republicans are mostly stressed about the economy and immigration. Democrats? Almost half of them say their top concern is political extremism or the threat to democracy. Independents are stuck in the middle, torn between the economy and political division. Things don't get any sunnier when you ask folks about what's coming next. 61% think a recession is looming in the next year, and only 24% say the economic news they come across is actually positive. But again, the party lines split things wide open. 82% of Democrats are bracing for a recession compared to just 44% of Republicans. Meanwhile, Republicans are more than twice as likely as Democrats to say they're seeing upbeat economic news in their feeds, 41% versus 16%. Then there's the question of where the country's even going. Nearly half of Americans say the U.S. is veering way off course. Only 34% believe it's headed in the right direction, and 16% are throwing their hands up, basically saying, no clue. When it comes to specific problems, 53% believe the national economy is off track, 64% say their cost of living is getting worse, and 44% feel like the job market is slipping. Across the board, the biggest worries are political extremism, the economy, and immigration, though once again, it depends on who you ask. On April 5th, Trump hit the global economy with a 10% tariff on pretty much everything coming into the U.S., declaring it was time to rebalance trade with the rest of the world. And if that wasn't enough, just 4 days later, on April 9th, he took things up a notch by slapping even steeper tariffs on countries he claimed were playing dirty in trade. But Wall Street wasn't having it. After the markets took a nosedive, the White House pulled a quick reverse and hit pause on those harsher rates for 90 days. Everyone got that break, except China. For them, there was no mercy. The full tariff load on Chinese goods under Trump's second term has now climbed to a jaw-dropping 145%. The White House clarified that this new round of universal tariffs didn't apply to goods that had already been hit with earlier ones. So things like steel, aluminum, cars, car parts, and goods from Canada and Mexico got a temporary hall pass. Speaking of autos, the U.S. had already imposed a 25% tariff on all imported vehicles on April 3rd. And by May 3rd, it added the same 25% rate on more than 300 categories of auto parts, everything from bumpers to axles to seats. Canada wasn't going to sit quietly. Starting April 9th, they fired back with a 25% tariff on vehicles that don't meet the USMCA rules. Trump also rolled out what he called the fentanyl and immigration tariffs, targeting Mexico and Canada again. As of March 4th, imports from both neighbors were slapped with a 25% tariff, except for energy products and potash, which got a reduced 10% rate. According to Trump, this was meant to punish them for letting unauthorized migrants and fentanyl sneak into the U.S. Later, the administration walked back some of those tariffs, at least for goods that qualified under USMCA. But anything that didn't meet those trade agreement standards still got taxed. Canada's response? A $21 billion wave of retaliatory tariffs on everything from fresh produce to liquor and appliances. Mexico threatened to do the same, but didn't follow through. At least not yet. Then came the steel and aluminum war. On March 12th, the U.S. put a blanket 25% tariff on all such imports. Canada retaliated again, slapping a $20.6 billion tariff on U.S. goods. The EU wasn't far behind. They kicked off April with a 50% tariff on American whiskey, motorboats, and motorcycles. A week later, they approved even more tariffs worth $23 billion, covering everything from chewing gum to peanut butter, but hit pause for 90 days in hopes of talking things out with the US. And then there's China. On February 3rd, Trump added another 10% tariff to the already long list of tariffs from both his first term and Biden's time in office. Beijing wasted no time clapping back. By February 10th, China had thrown down a 15% tariff on American coal and LNG, plus a 10% hit on crude oil, farm equipment, and other goods. March 3rd came with another Trump tariff twist. He slapped an extra 10% on Chinese goods, dialing up the heat yet again. Beijing didn't blink. They clapped back on March 10th with their own list. 15% on American chicken, wheat, corn, and cotton. Then another 10% on sorghum, soybeans, pork, beef, seafood, fruits, vegetables, and dairy. Basically, they hit the grocery aisle hard. Fast forward to April 9th, and Trump wasn't done. He tacked on another 34% tariff on Chinese imports, claiming it was time to punish Beijing for what he called unfair trade tactics. China answered the next day with their own 34% hike. Then Trump threw the kitchen sink, another jump, bringing total tariffs on Chinese goods to a jaw-dropping 145% during his second term. Not to be outdone, China fired back on April 11th with 125% tariffs on American goods. US-China trade war level, beast mode. Meanwhile, Venezuela got dragged into the mix. On March 24th, Trump declared that any country buying oil or gas from Venezuela would be hit with a 25% tariff on their exports to the US. He said the goal was to layer that on top of existing duties, making it extra painful. On March 4th, Trump also announced he was coming for copper and lumber with another 25% tariff. That means homes, pipes, wires, everything's about to cost more. And don't forget the tech and pharma sectors. Back on February 18th, Trump floated the idea of hitting imported semiconductors and pharmaceutical products with tariffs of 25% or higher. Yep, even your pills and processors aren't safe. Trump has now hit the brakes on most of his reciprocal tariff plans, giving U.S. trading partners a 90-day pause. This came right after Treasury bond markets threw a tantrum. Still, the 10% baseline import tax remains in effect globally. But when it comes to China, no mercy. Trump's been doubling down, teasing even harsher penalties just days later. And over in China, they're having a field day. Social media accounts tied to Chinese state outlets are riding the trade war wave with AI-powered mockery. One viral clip has Trump and Elon Musk suited up in matching factory blues, cranking out Nike sneakers on an assembly line. Next to them, Vice President J.D. Vance is shown piecing together an iPhone like a budget technician. Denim on, MAGA hat, suspiciously blank. The jabs didn't stop there. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning joined the party with an AI post, featuring red MAGA hats now stamped with a bright Made in China label, and marked up $27. She reportedly told local press that Beijing isn't scared of provocations, and certainly isn't backing off, no matter how many tariffs DC piles on. Beijing Business Daily took it even further, turning their attention to the famously uninhabited Heard and McDonald Islands, recently slapped with U.S. tariffs, and digitally outfitting the resident penguins in Make America Go Away baseball caps. CGTN, China's state-owned broadcaster, released an AI-generated parody music video titled Look What You Taxed Us Through, riffing off Taylor Swift's hit, Look What You Made Me Do. The video immediately gained traction across Chinese platforms, TikTok, and even made its way to ousted MSNBC host Joy Reid's Instagram. Meanwhile, one mega-viral TikTok from influencer Ben Lau showcased rows of overweight American workers drenched in sweat while hunched over sewing machines and assembling smartphones. Traditional Chinese music played in the background, while bold subtitles mocked the Make America Great Again slogan, flipping the whole narrative on its head. This mockery from China kind of sticks, because aside from Mexico, America buys more from China than any other country. Yes, even after Trump's first round of trade crackdowns nudged some factories over to nearby spots like Vietnam, Indonesia, Cambodia, and India. Those countries, by the way, just dodged the bullet on the latest wave of higher tariffs. Take Vietnam, for instance. It's not just a rising star in Southeast Asia, it's currently the kingpin of Nike shoe production worldwide. And if you slipped on a pair of sneakers in the US last year, there's a pretty solid chance they came from Vietnam. In fact, nearly 1/3 of all shoes that landed on American soil in 2023 were Vietnamese made, according to the Footwear Distributors and Retailers of America. Still, China's not out of the picture. Most shoes in the US are still made there. And despite all the trade tension, many big-name US companies aren't exactly racing to bring manufacturing back home. That's because, like it or not, China still holds the crown as America's go-to partner when it comes to electronics, clothing, textiles, and, of course, footwear. This info isn't just hearsay. It's straight from the US International Trade Commission's most recent stats. Here's the scoreboard. In 2024 alone, the US and China did business to the tune of $582.4 billion. That's not a typo. Of that, $143.5 billion were American exports headed to China, while a much larger $438.9 billion flowed in the opposite direction. Do the math, and you get a $295.4 billion trade deficit, courtesy of the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative. So, while Washington makes noise about cracking down on Beijing, American shelves and closets still say otherwise.